Here are the radical youth of Port Chalmers. So, I'm going to document the show with some videos, and I'll do so room by room because there's about 4 or 5 zones in the facility. I'm going to begin by telling you about this work, which was the last work I received in the mail. Some works I picked up personally, and other works were sent to me. And Peter Gibson is a senior New Zealand artist from Christchurch, and interestingly enough was one of my high school art tutors at Hagley High. And at that time, Peter was a renowned performance artist. He had worked in London and had some pretty significant shows in Auckland Public Art Gallery, and was a high school teacher in Christchurch with a bunch of left-wing, punky, alternative kids with attitude, which is what Hagley High School was as a multi-borough, non-uniform, lesbian headmaster type school. Peter has used corrugated cardboard, plaster, shellac, and acrylic paint, and it's called Two States, which is the perfect analogy for the show, because that's what the show is essentially about recognising Palestine as a state, rather than just a mob of refugees being murdered by Israel and American forces. And the point of the show is because New Zealand supports America as an ally, and a lot of us don't agree with that. Two States is an interesting work because it looks like a UN logo on one hand. It's blue and red, which is a political. It's also left and right in terms of a hemisphere in the brain. I think it's a very clever piece of iconography. It's textural in a homemade folk manner. Peter's got quite a reasonable price on it of $800 the pair, and it's in my window as a fairly safe and meaningful work. So today's video will just be looking at the lounge and that front window. This work is Donna Demento's, and Donna's been doing this kind of work for a very long time. This work is called Gars and Gaze 4. And it's from a series of work, Momin's Garden. I don't quite know what that is, she didn't elaborate, but that's what's on the back of the work. So one friend mentioned that when we look in people's eyes, it's quite difficult to dehumanize them. That's one take on this work. It's also a direct confrontation. When we meet another soul, we acknowledge exactly that. The personhood, the divinity in some cultures, as it's said, and the being that resides within. So Gaze and Gaze is obviously just recognising ourselves in the other, perhaps. And also, I would have to say, an attractive female's gaze. It's all in the eyes. Donna plays with, I think, ideas of surface, illusion, and meaning behind the mask. It's a form of art that is both easily digestible and also symbolic within a high craft, high skill, painterly manner. Donna has $3,750 on this work, and all of that is going to her project of rescuing one single refugee and bringing him to New Zealand. And she has half done that. The boy, the young man that she has championed to leave Palestine is, as far as I'm aware, in Cairo. And Donna's been instrumental and a force of activism around this cause in particular. It's an honour to have her in my home looking at me on my Afghan carpet when I do my meditation. Big sister. We have the clock chiming in Port Chalmers. This work is called Any Excuse, 1 and 2. I have to usually stand with visitors for a moment, get them to look at it. People don't look unless I stand with them and look at the work. They need someone to look at the work with them. They don't often see the work in the lounge when they walk in, and I take them back to the lounge and I stand them in front of the work and I say, "What do you think that is?" And mostly they're confused and they say, "I don't know." And I say, "Well, it's two symbols intertwined. Some people see it, others don't." And I say, "Well, it's two symbols around the show, around the ideas in the show." And then I say, "Well, it's a stylized and abstracted, reduced Star of David and a Nazi swastika." And then they see it. Any Excuse by Philip Trustram. I walked into Philip's studio and he had 15 works like this, similar, same motif, each one different, complicated design. He plays with language. He is a senior New Zealand artist who's been working tirelessly for 50 odd years, if not more. Philip's in his mid-80s. He lives in Peterborough Street in Christchurch, and he's very famous throughout the land. And I'm totally honoured and blown away that he would loan me some works from his collection. Now, Philip was already working on this motif when I asked him for contributions to the show, so there's been a lot of synchronicities. Any Excuse. Here he is. And this is some promotional material from another show that he's got in Christchurch. Awesome stuff. You can't The implications of Philip's work are devastating. The implications that the order that contains us all, a corporate order, a neo-global corporate order, the demolition of democracy, that this could actually be a long-term intergenerational Nazi project, both of Zionist Israel and perhaps even the New World Order corporate wars that the West has succumbed to. Did the empire ever end? Were they always the same? These are issues of identity, nationalism, allegiance. Philip's work alludes to a lot, and as all the deepest communication reveals, it's in the underlining symbolism. Great stuff. This is a small work of mine, Grief and Praise. It's a fragment, it's a ripped off corner of a stain work outside. I rescued a fragment that had resonance, and I've had it up for over a year. It went with me around various grief processes that I've been through, and I thought Grief and Praise was a apt analogy. Grief and Praise is a term that comes from a Guatemalan shaman called Martin Pretel. Martin Pretel does poetic, shamanic healing work in workshops through America around the slaughter in Guatemala by neo-American fascist forces, where his village was decimated by paramilitaries. Martin Pretel is a wonderful orator and poet around grief and praise, and an indigenous holistic take on dealing with trauma and, let's just say the evil of the world. The people that end up teaching about these things are the ones who have experienced it, and this man and his people certainly have. Anyway, the title is taken from Martin Pretel. My work is of my own process. And yes, it's a soft work that I didn't intend to do. I favour work that comes from my subconscious that I did not intend. I believe I've put $1,500 on it, because essentially it's a sort of incidental scrap that I've mounted inside of a remodulated wooden frame. Yes, but to me it's very precious because it's not something I could intended to do. It got born of a process where I was waking up crying a lot of days in a row. This work is Occupation, Conflict and Patriarchy by Michelle Anand. Michelle's travelled and lived in the Middle East extensively and has painted quite a lot of works from her travels. This particular work is a Syrian work, not intended to be about Gaza or Palestine, and yet it has all the resonances my shorthand when I'm showing people when they are in my lounge actually bothering to look is It's a psycho-spiritual rape scene, I say. I have a rape scene in my lounge. That's very arresting, that's very confronting. That's very real. In terms of the subject of the show, which all work has to correlate with the subject of the show. Michelle's complex is well illustrated here. A lot of archetypes. I don't have to necessarily like or agree with work in the show, but I do respect that people have been dealing with their forms of trauma and agitation socially for a long time, and that this public genocide that we are involved in as an ally should be made evident in artists' social conscience. And this is another work of mine called Outside In, Colonized Mind War. Very hard to photograph or video because of the reflective qualities in the glass. It's a deep tray frame. The outside was a tabletop that was wonderfully weathered, and I smashed a frame in the studio trying to frame it as a gift for someone, and I didn't want to waste the tantrum I had of smashing the previous glass, and I glued it down with my thick epoxy resins, not epoxy but something similar, and I've captured the blast, the impact, the shattering. In my mind, artistically, has always been about a sort of symbolic gesture of action, trying to record nature. There's burn holes. I've also collected floor sweepings from my studio and strewn them through the hole there. So a lot of the material is fixed, but also a lot of the material is loose. And should one tip it upside down, it will move like rubble, like detritus, like other people's rubbish in our head that gets filtered through. At the same time, there's a sort of naturalistic expansion. There's a material weight on the bottom, and there's a sort of gravity explosion. For me, I love the naturalistic marks, the implied narratives, and this work's gone through many iterations, but I thought it was quite appropriate as a form of sort of collapse and the propaganda mind spell of the goodies, the baddies, and all of that. Okay. Me. So thank you for looking at the lounge, essentially, and I will do the main studio and the other rooms incrementally as I go. Cheers. Should you be interested in a work, I'll put my email below this video, and we can sort something out.